Every NFL team has had that quarterback, the one who made fans scream, coaches panic, and defenses pray for rest. Some were top picks. Others came out of nowhere, but every single one was unforgettable for all the wrong reasons. Today, we're diving deep into the worst quarterback each NFL team has put under center since 2000. From wild busts to one-game wonders to total disasters, you'll hear the names that still haunt fan bases today. And trust me, some of these are worse than you remember. So buckle up, because it only gets messier from here. Jamarcus Russell, Raiders. Jamarcus Russell is still the gold standard for NFL busts. And not just because of how bad he played, but how everything around him made it worse. Coming out of LSU, he looked like a can't-miss star. Big arm, big body, big hype. His pro day had scouts drooling. One anonymous GM called it the best quarterback workout I've ever seen. And that was all Al Davis needed to hear. The Raiders took him number. First overall in 2007 and handed him $30 million guaranteed. Then it all fell apart. Russell showed up to camp overweight. He didn't study. He didn't lead. And most damning of all, former coaches said they once gave him a blank DVD labeled game film to test him. The next day, Russell claimed he watched it and liked the plays. There were no plays. In 25 career starts, he threw 18 touchdowns and 23 interceptions. But the stats don't capture how checked out he looked on Sundays. Slow feet, late throws, and body language that screamed, "I don't care." One Raiders fan said it best on Reddit. Jamarcus made me hate football for a while. And just like that, Russell was gone. Released by 2010, he never played another snap. The Raiders would spend the next decade trying to recover from that pick. Now, what happens when the guy actually wants to play, but can't stop partying? Let's talk about Johnny Manziel, Browns. In college, Johnny Manziel looked like magic. He beat Alabama, won the Heisman, and made highlight reels look like video games. But in Cleveland, he became a cautionary tale, not just for talent, but for maturity. The Browns took Manziel 22nd overall in 2014, and fans thought they'd finally found their guy. What they got instead was chaos. Johnny would reportedly party the night before games, skip team activities, and flat out ignore the playbook. According to one report, the Browns installed a GPS in his iPad. It barely moved. Veteran quarterback Josh McCown tried to mentor him. "You can't coach somebody who doesn't want it," he said later. Manziel didn't want it. On the field, things were just as bad. He went 2-6 as a starter, completed 57% of his passes, and had more fines than touchdowns some weeks. And off the field, TMZ followed him more than NFL reporters did. The Browns front office was a mess too. 3 GMS in 4 years, coaching turnover, no consistent system. Still, Manziel never gave himself a real chance. And by 2016, he was out of the league. He once said, "I'm not going to change for anyone." That's exactly what ended his career. Now, if Johnny was reckless, the next guy was just unwatchable. Nathan Peterman, Bills. If there's a Hall of Fame for terrible starts, Nathan Peterman is the first ballot entry. In 2017, the Bills were in a playoff race. Head coach Sean McDermott suddenly benched Tyrod Taylor and gave Peterman the start against the Chargers. What happened next is NFL history. 5 interceptions in one half. McDermott later called it a learning moment. Bills fans called it a nightmare. Peterman kept getting chances, but it never got better. He threw 12 picks on just 130 career attempts. That's 1 interception every 11 throws. At times, it felt like he was trying to throw to the other team. And yet, he stuck around. Raiders, Bears, even the Jaguars gave him a look. It became a running joke online. How does Nathan Peterman still have a job? NFL writer Mina Kimes once said, "Peterman is the worst quarterback I've ever seen, and I cover the Browns." But somehow, he survived. Peterman might be the only quarterback whose name became a punchline before his first full game. Now, what about a guy who never got that many chances and still bombed just as hard. Josh Rosen, Cardinals. Josh Rosen was supposed to be the smart pick. 9 teams made a mistake, he said on draft night, and by the end of year 1, the Cardinals were wondering if they were the 10th. Rosen came out of UCLA with a clean release and a clean resume. Analysts said he was the most pro-ready quarterback in his class. But in Arizona, he was set up to fail. No offensive line, no run game, a broken coaching staff. He took 45 sacks and got hit constantly. He threw 11 touchdowns and 14 picks. Not great, but it wasn't just the numbers. Rosen looked rattled. His mechanics broke down. He lost confidence, and the team lost faith. The very next year, new head coach Cliff Kingsbury took Kyler Murray number 1 overall. Rosen was traded to Miami, then cut a year later, then Tampa, then Atlanta, then nowhere. NFL execs started calling him uncoachable. Whether that's fair or not, it stuck. Rosen had talent, but talent doesn't survive in the wrong system, and he might be the poster boy for how fast the NFL can give up on you. But at least Rosen could move. The next guy, he was a statue waiting to be sacked. Blaine Gabbert, Jaguars. Blaine Gabbert looked the part, tall, athletic, big arm. But the moment the ball was snapped, it all went wrong. Drafted 10th overall by the Jaguars in 2011, Gabbert was supposed to be the future, but he looked terrified in the pocket. As one scout later said, he played like the rush was already there. He'd flinch at shadows, drop his eyes too early, miss open guys. He started 14 games as a rookie and won 4 of them. Barely. He threw more interceptions than touchdowns, fumbled constantly, and never improved. Year 2 was just more of the same. Part of it wasn't his fault. The Jaguars had no offensive line and no real weapons. But Gabbert didn't make anyone better. And by 2013, they were done. He bounced around the league after that. 49ers, Titans, Bucks, Chiefs, usually as a backup, always with low expectations. Jaguars fans called him Check Down Charlie. One local writer summed it up. Gabbert was a quarterback who didn't want the ball in his hands. That's about the worst thing you can say about a quarterback. Coming up next, what happens when a backup fools everyone and cashes in huge? Brock Osweiler, Texans Broncos. Brock Osweiler had one job: hold the clipboard, learn behind Peyton Manning, and maybe take over in a few years. Instead, a few good games turned him into one of the biggest free agent mistakes in NFL history. Let's go back. It's 2015. Peyton's aging, hurt, and throwing ducks. Osweiler comes in, wins some games, helps the Broncos lock up home field. It wasn't flashy, but it looked solid. Houston saw just enough to throw him a $72 million deal. That's when everything fell apart. Osweiler couldn't read a defense. His footwork was clunky. He held the ball too long, made late decisions, and never once looked comfortable in Bill O'Brien's system. Teammates said he acted like a starter before he earned it. One source inside the Texans called him cocky, cold, and completely unaware. He threw 15 touchdowns and 16 interceptions in 2016, got benched mid-game, and still found ways to blame others. Fans were booing, O'Brien was fuming, and the Texans were stuck. Then came one of the wildest trades ever. Houston dumped Osweiler's contract to Cleveland with a second-round pick just to get rid of him. They literally paid to erase him. The Browns didn't even want him. He got cut before the season started. Osweiler finished his career bouncing between Miami and a Denver return, where fans greeted him with a mix of pity and rage. One Broncos fan summed it up in a tweet: "He robbed 2 franchises and we let him." From promising backup to a $37 million warning sign, Brock Osweiler became the face of how quickly hype can crash. Now Osweiler's failure was about money. But the next guy? His downfall was about survival. He was thrown into the fire before the team even bought a fire extinguisher. David Carr, Texans. In 2002, the Houston Texans entered the league and made David Carr their first ever draft pick. It should have been the beginning of something special. Instead, it was the start of one of the most brutal careers in NFL history. Carr had talent, good arm, smart kid, strong build, but he didn't have a chance. Houston's offensive line was a disaster. In his rookie year, he was sacked a record 76 times, a number that still stands today. He was hit constantly, pressured on nearly every drop back, and never given time to develop. It didn't just hurt his stats, it broke him. He started hearing footsteps, even when they weren't there. Analysts said his internal clock got so fast, he'd bail from clean pockets. One NFL coach said he became scared to throw. You could see it in his eyes. The Texans didn't help. They never built around him. No star receivers. No real run game. No stability. Just sack after sack after sack. Carr finished his Texans career with 65 touchdowns, 71 picks, and more pain than most QBs endure in a lifetime. He later admitted, "I got hit so much I stopped trusting the protection, even when it was there." Fans didn't blame him. They blamed the team, but the damage was done. David Carr wasn't a bust because of talent. He was a bust because he got ruined. There's a difference. Now, while Carr was punished into regression, the next guy cashed in, then checked out. Joe Flacco, Jets, Broncos, post-Ravens. Joe Flacco had one of the greatest postseason runs ever in 2012. 11 touchdowns, 0 picks, and a Super Bowl ring. Then he got paid and slowly faded into irrelevance. Post-Ravens Flacco wasn't just average. He was disinterested. When he landed in Denver in 2019, he was asked about mentoring rookie Drew Lock. His answer? "That's not my job." That one sentence defined his second act. Flacco's time with the Broncos was forgettable. 6 games, 6 touchdowns, 5 losses. He looked slow, indecisive, and worse, like he didn't care. Then came the Jets. Injuries pushed him into action, and the results were painful. Missed throws, late reads, and drives that went nowhere. Jets fans begged for anyone else. On Reddit, one user posted, "Watching Flacco is like watching someone drive in reverse on the freeway." He finished with a losing record and a QBR that barely cracked 40. Not only did he not mentor Sam Darnold or Zach Wilson, he actively became a roadblock. Flacco's arm stayed solid, but everything else, leadership, mobility, urgency, was gone. Even teammates noticed. One former Jet said, "He was quiet. He was distant. He wasn't helping anyone." Flacco didn't flame out like other busts. He faded away, collecting paychecks while teams hoped for a spark that never came. Now let's move from fading talent to talent that never even made sense on paper. Christian Ponder, Vikings. The Vikings drafted Christian Ponder 12th overall in 2011. And pretty much from day one, it didn't feel right. He wasn't even projected as a first rounder by most scouts. But Minnesota panicked. They needed a quarterback and reached. Big mistake. Ponder looked uncomfortable in the pocket. His throws lacked velocity. His decision-making was slow. He started 10 games as a rookie and showed flashes. But year 2 was where it all unraveled. He threw 18 touchdowns and 12 interceptions. Not awful, but the eye test was worse. Missed reads, panicked footwork, and zero confidence. Vikings fans weren't subtle. They booed him at home, chanted for backups. One game, they begged for Matt Cassell. Then there was the spotlight off the field. His marriage to ESPN's Sam Ponder drew media attention, and some unfair criticism. Fans called it a distraction, even though his play alone was the issue. He never got better, never turned the corner, and by year 4, he was gone. One local columnist wrote, "It's not that Ponder was bad, it's that he was never good, and we all saw it coming." Drafting Ponder set the Vikings back years. They had to reset the roster, change coaches, and start over. Now, if Ponder was painfully average, the next guy was just historically bad. DeShone Kizer, Browns. DeShone Kizer's NFL career lasted one season as a starter. It was one of the ugliest rookie years in league history. Kizer was just 21 when he was thrown into the fire. The Browns were rebuilding again, and Hugh Jackson thought Kizer was ready. He wasn't. Kizer went 0-15 as a starter in 2017. He led the league in interceptions, turnovers, and moments that made fans cover their eyes. He had a rocket arm, but no control. He forced throws, stared down receivers, and looked totally lost. His confidence tanked by mid-season. At one point, Hugh benched him, then brought him back, then benched him again. It was chaos. The Browns were awful around him. No receivers, a leaky line, and a defense that couldn't hold leads. But Kizer didn't help. He threw 22 picks, took 38 sacks, and lost 4 games by less than a field goal. Even in close games, you felt like he'd find a way to lose. After just one season, Cleveland gave up and drafted Baker Mayfield. Kizer bounced to Green Bay, Oakland, and Tennessee, but never started another game. He once said, "I know I can be a starter in this league." The league didn't agree. Now, we go from one season of chaos to a full-blown media circus, and a quarterback who became a headline instead of a hero. Tim Tebow, Jets. There's never been a quarterback quite like Tim Tebow, and probably never will be again. His playoff miracle with the Broncos was unforgettable, but when the New York Jets traded for him, it was doomed before it even began. In 2012, the Jets already had Mark Sanchez. They didn't need a quarterback, but they wanted headlines. So they traded for Tebow, a player who couldn't throw, didn't fit the offense, and came with a media circus the size of Manhattan. From day one, it was awkward. The Jets said he'd be a wildcat option, but never really used him. Reporters swarmed him. Teammates were confused. One anonymous Jets player even told a reporter, "He's terrible. We all know it." Tebow attempted just 8 passes all year. There was a moment in December when fans chanted for him. The team ignored it. Instead, they rolled out Greg McElroy. Yes, really. The locker room fell apart. The offense was a disaster, and the whole Tebow experiment became a punchline. Even Rex Ryan admitted years later it was a mistake. Tebow never played quarterback again. He tried a brief comeback with the Eagles, then minor league baseball, then TV. He wasn't the worst quarterback because of performance. He's on this list because the Jets turned football into theater, and Tebow was their main act. And speaking of bizarre theater, the next guy got paid $20 million because of one good game, then vanished. Matt Flynn, Seahawks. Matt Flynn's entire career is proof that one hot game can change everything. For better or worse, let's rewind to January 1st, 2012. Flynn started a meaningless game for the Packers, with Aaron Rodgers resting. He threw for 480 yards and 6 touchdowns. One game. That was all it took. The Seahawks saw that and signed him to a 3-year, $20 million deal. He was finally getting his shot. But then something weird happened. Seattle drafted a 3rd-round rookie named Russell Wilson. And from the moment camp started, it was obvious. Wilson was better. Flynn didn't even make it to week 1. Pete Carroll named Wilson the starter, and Flynn became a very expensive backup. He never started a single regular season game for the Seahawks. After that, it was a tour through backup land. Raiders, Bills, Packers again, Patriots, Jets. Flynn started just 7 more games in his career, and never looked like that guy from the Packers again. One fan joked, Matt Flynn made $20 million for doing his best work in January, the wrong kind of January. In a league full of busts and broken dreams, Flynn is unique. He wasn't bad. He just wasn't the guy anyone hoped for. Now, if Flynn was forgettable, the next one was unforgettable, for the worst reason in the world. Mark Sanchez, Jets. Mark Sanchez will always be known for one thing, the butt fumble. But his story is bigger and sadder than that. The Jets drafted Sanchez 5th overall in 2009. He wasn't a polished passer, but he had confidence. That first year, he helped take the Jets to the AFC Championship. Then he did it again in year 2. It looked like they found their guy. But instead of growing, Sanchez regressed. His decision-making got worse. He started turning the ball over. A lot. He finished his Jets career with more interceptions than touchdowns. And even when the defense carried them, he couldn't close games. Then came Thanksgiving, 2012. The Jets were getting blown out. Sanchez tried to scramble, ran into his own lineman's backside, fumbled, and created a meme that still lives today. The butt fumble. From that moment, his career was never the same. The media shredded him. Fans gave up. The Jets eventually benched him, and he bounced to the Eagles, Cowboys, Bears, and Washington. One teammate later said, he was just never ready, and the team never helped him grow. Mark Sanchez wasn't the worst talent. He just peaked early, then spiraled. Now we move from early success to a guy who never even got off the ground. Paxton Lynch, Broncos. John Elway saw something. Maybe it was the height. Maybe it was the arm. But when the Broncos drafted Paxton Lynch in the first round in 2016, they believed they were getting the future of the franchise. Instead, they got one of the most unprepared quarterbacks the league has ever seen. Lynch couldn't beat out Trevor Siemian. Then he couldn't beat out Chad Kelly. In the rare times he did start, he looked lost, confused, nervous. He couldn't run the offense. He didn't process defenses. He struggled with the playbook. By year 2, fans were done. One Denver columnist wrote, "He looks like a man trying to do calculus while being chased by a bear." Behind the scenes, it was worse. Coaches said he lacked urgency. He didn't take film seriously. Some even questioned his work ethic. He finished his Broncos career with just 4 starts, 4 touchdowns, and 4 picks. Cut by year 3. He tried the CFL. Didn't last. The XFL? Same story. For a first-round pick, it was one of the fastest flameouts ever. Paxton Lynch showed what happens when you draft tools over talent and ignore the red flags. But even Lynch didn't start a playoff game. The next guy did, and made history for all the wrong reasons. Ryan Lindley, Cardinals. In 2014, the Arizona Cardinals were a playoff team. Great defense, smart coaching. They just needed a steady hand at quarterback. Instead, they got Ryan Lindley. Lindley had already been cut once by Arizona, but injuries to Carson Palmer and Drew Stanton left the team desperate. So they brought him back and started him in a playoff game. He had 2 career touchdowns and 11 interceptions. That's not a typo. 11 picks, 2 scores, and the results were brutal. In the wild card game against the Panthers, Lindley completed just 16 passes for 82 yards. The Cardinals had 78 total yards of offense, the lowest in NFL playoff history. Lindley looked terrified. The offense never had a chance. One analyst joked Arizona would have done better with a cardboard cutout at quarterback. After that game, Lindley never started another NFL snap. His total QBR in 2014 was 2.0, not 20, 2. The strange part, he's now an NFL coach. Maybe he's better at teaching it than playing it, but his name will always live in playoff infamy. Now, we wrap this up with the most recent disaster, a quarterback who was supposed to save a franchise and might have buried it instead. Zach Wilson, Jets. The Jets thought they'd finally found their savior. They picked Zach Wilson 2nd overall in 2021. He had the arm, the athleticism, the flashy throws, but none of it translated. From the jump, he looked lost. His rookie season was full of missed reads, panicked throws, and awful decisions. But it was year 2 where things truly collapsed. In a game against the Patriots, the Jets gained 77 total yards. Afterward, when asked if he let the defense down, Wilson simply said, "No." That one word cost him the locker room. Teammates turned. Receivers started calling for trades. Anonymous sources ripped his work ethic. One defensive player said he acts like it's not his fault. Ever. Wilson got benched, then brought back, then benched again. The numbers were bad. 23 starts, 15 touchdowns, 18 interceptions. But it was the vibe that killed him. He looked like a quarterback pretending to be a quarterback. No swagger, no confidence, no growth. By 2024, the Jets were openly shopping him. It felt like everyone, fans, coaches, media, had already moved on. One headline read, "Zach Wilson might be the worst pick in Jets history." That's saying something, and that's where we end. 16 teams, 16 mistakes. Some were doomed from the start. Some just let the moment get too big. But all of them left their teams asking the same question. What were we thinking? And there it is. The worst quarterback disaster from every NFL team since 2000. Some were doomed. Others just didn't care. But all of them left their mark. If you made it this far, you're a real one. Drop a like, hit subscribe, and let us know your pick in the comments.